Good morning, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and get us started because we are right at 11 o'clock. All right. My name is Zinnia Willits, and I am the Executive Director of the Southeastern Museums Conference. Welcome, all of you, to SCMC's September virtual program, Publishing Profits Museums. A warm welcome to all of our members who are joining us today, as well as those who may be new to the Southeastern Museums Conference, which we shorten to just SEMC. SEMC is a regional professional organization representing museums and museum staff in the 12 southeastern states, as well as the U.S. Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico. We have a strong membership of over 2,000 and continue to grow. Please consider joining SEMC, where access to virtual programs is always free with membership. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge and thank the National Museum of African American History and Culture, Office of Strategic Partnerships, for the significant virtual program support they have provided this year, which helps SEMC keep all our virtual programs low cost. Additionally, a huge thank you to Frisians for support of today's program, which allowed us to offer it totally free for everyone. We're pleased to continue the 2025 virtual program series with this discussion about how a museum, historic site, or any type of art or history organization can begin the journey of creating its own publications. I know you will have many questions for our speakers, Brandy Harrell, Hillary Brown, and Nathan Melman, and I hope we will all have a chance for dialogue and to be in community together today. Professional development is a year-round endeavor for SEMC, and we appreciate everyone's commitment to both present and attend. Now it is my pleasure to introduce Heather Nowak, SEMC's Program Administrator, to review some session housekeeping information before we begin the discussion.
Hi, everyone, and thanks for joining us today. As Zinnia mentioned, my name is Heather Nowak, and I'm the Program Administrator for the Southeastern Museums Conference. Before getting started, I'll quickly cover a few housekeeping items. Firstly, be mindful that we are in a meeting format today, so I encourage you all to keep your computers muted. We will have time to share at the end, so in the meantime, utilize the chat, introduce yourself, share information, and ask questions. If you need closed captioning, it is available. Simply click the CC button in your Zoom screen and enable the auto transcription feature. You can also download a full transcript of the program by clicking More at the bottom of your Zoom screen, choose Captions, and then View Full Transcript. The program today is being recorded and will be emailed to each of you. For those of you familiar with SEMC, you know our annual meeting in Montgomery, Alabama is quickly approaching. If you haven't registered already, it closes on October 13th, so be sure to do that. We will be hosting our annual Know Before You Go program on October 7th, so if you want to learn all the conference details before you arrive, you don't want to miss this meetup. Visit our virtual programs page to reserve your spot. Lastly, at the end of the program, I will share a short 2-minute survey. These surveys help us for future programming, so please fill those out. Tell us how we did today and what you would like to see in the future. We have a very informative program today, so let's get started. It's my pleasure to introduce our panelists. Joining us is Brandy Harrell, Account Representative at Frisians Corporation. Again, thanks to Frisians for sponsoring the program today. Also joining us is Nathan Molman, Creative Director of Goosepin Studio and Press, and Hillary Brown, Director of Communications at the Georgia Museum of Art. Many thanks to all of our panelists today for your perspectives on the profitability of publishing. Brandy, I turn it over to you.
Thank you guys so much. Thank you to SEMC for allowing us to share this information. Trying to get my screen share up here. So this is something that I've wanted to be able to present to SEMC for a little while now. Hillary and Nathan and I have proposed it as an in-person workshop a couple of times, and it's not been picked up. So we're very glad to be here today and still get to put this information in front of you. I'm Brandy. I work for Friesens. We're a book printer. I read banned books. So that's going to be my take on things today. I work with a lot of museums across the Southeast, and I see a variety of ways that a variety of publications can benefit them. So I come in with big ideas and the ways that you can use these publications. Nathan is going to speak to you from the book designer side of things and how once you've decided that you're going to make a publication, you can deal with the creative side of things and design and layout. And then we have my great friend, Hillary Hazel Brown, that will come in at the end, Director of Communications for Georgia Museum of Art, and has ran a successful self-publishing program there for some time. But she will give you nuts and bolts of sales and distribution and all of the real world things after you hear my big ideas. So, as I said, I'm Brandy. I work for Friesens. We're a book manufacturer. I work with a multitude of museums, historical sites throughout the Southeast U.S. That's my territory here. So, Georgia Museum of Art, Knoxville Museum of Art, the High Museum, North Carolina Cultural Resources, East Tennessee Historical, the list is very varied. And I see how these publications firsthand elevate the work that museums are doing within their walls, as well as enhance their impact in the outside world. In my mind, printing and art museums is an easy collaboration because good book printing is an art form and it requires craftsmanship and artisans. And in my mind, printing and historical organizations go together because printing's always been a primary method of preserving history and bringing it to life for new generations. Books are obviously a way to educate, just like your science and your children's museums do every day. Publishing helps you share stories and insights, but what I want to shed some light on is how it can also help you achieve missions and goals. So publishing generates revenue. And when I'm talking about publications today, I don't want your mind to just be in the world of books. Publications for a museum can mean books, children's books, anniversary books, periodicals, newsletters, magazines. In the world of thinking about how publishing can help generate revenue, I think mostly along the lines of children's books, exhibit catalogs, educational pieces, journals, magazines, calendars. So let's cut to the brass tacks and discuss how publishing can bring your organization a new revenue stream. This does require some decisions on your part to be on the right path, but as I said, Hillary's going to expand upon those details. Books, journals, and calendars can be sold in many ways. Your website, in your gift shop, other online or retail outlets. I've seen some pretty creative collaborations in that arena. Once you've created these projects and you generate a financial influx, you can use that revenue to cover various museum expenses, invest in new initiatives at your organization, further future publications, or support outside causes that you believe in. On the marketing side of things, publishing projects can be used to generate funds, crowdsourcing for a project, or additional funding that may just be offered to your organization due to social media or crossover exposure. Publications can also help you build credibility. When I think of this topic, I'm thinking along the lines of exhibit catalogs, history books, educational pieces, magazines, periodicals, newsletters. Publications can help your museum build credibility as a notable organization and set your team apart as experts in your field. In a culture where everyone knows that any guy off the street can build a website or start a social media page, print conveys legitimacy, which is exactly why print is a popular medium with Gen Z and Gen Alpha. Print takes time and effort. We're going to learn all about that here today. And books are built to last the lifetime. In a digital age, high quality and well-crafted print pieces scream credibility. To build credibility, you can publish research and studies, exhibit collections, historical or educational work, or your museum's advancements and achievements. And one of the examples I like to give when I talk about the building credibility are in books that I did, Emma Amos for Georgia Museum of Art, or a book that I did on Barclay Hendricks for the Nasher Museum of Art. And in both of those cases, those books ended up being the foremost work that was done on that artist, the most comprehensive look at their art and their history, because they're not large artists. And I know that Hillary has conveyed that to me a lot about the Emma Amos project. I know in regard to the Nasher Museum project, Barclay Hendricks ended up getting a much larger gallery showing in New York. And as a result, they ended up needing to reprint that book. Tons of people came to them, looking for more information on this artist after they had seen his work. So that's one way that it can help you build credibility. And you see from those examples, publishing can be an opportunity to build legitimacy without having to seek publicity from outside outlets. In fact, it can be a resource for others to seek your knowledge and your wisdom on niche topics. Subsequently, you attract more visitors, donors, and media attention while you enhance your reputation. I've got this a little bit on two screens, so you guys got to forgive me when I make you wait here a second. All right, publications helping you just make deeper connections. Here, I think along the lines of books, magazines, periodicals, newsletters. This is a short and simple topic to me, but the opportunity is meaningful for you. Publications can help you connect more deeply with your audience. They're your vehicle to communicate with visitors, members, supporters, people beyond your physical location. Engaging and informative content in these publications helps to educate beyond the experience of physical exhibits and enriches the reader's connection with the museum. Printed publications have been proven to create a stronger bond and loyalty between an organization and the reader than any form of digital content. Celebrating your diversity. These things can be implemented in publications like magazines, periodicals, newsletters, the exhibit catalogs, anniversary books, or history and educational pieces. You can use your print projects to celebrate the diversity that is highlighted in your exhibits or diversity you want to celebrate within your staff. You may want to appeal to the diversity within the community you serve, or you may want to attract a more eclectic audience, or show that your organization has more depth and equity than your current reputation may convey. Publications can be your tool to discuss inclusion initiatives and facility accessibility advancements as well. Preserving our history. This is all publications. My last point is an obvious one. Not only do publications educate, but we also know that books preserve our history. This could be the history of collections, exhibits, artifacts, people, events, or your organization itself. Museums, landmarks, and historical organizations have an opportunity and a duty to document and archive their own history, culture, and heritage. Publications can ensure that your legacy and contributions are not lost through time. We can also secure the wealth of knowledge within exhibits, and collections is preserved beyond just the time that they're physically on display at your facility. So, in my humble opinion, and I may be a little biased, but producing publications can be a rewarding and beneficial endeavor for museums, regardless of the size or the type. I've created books, as I said, for everyone from local history agencies to the most prestigious art galleries. Publishing can be for you too. You just need a sharp vision, a strategic plan, and professional partners that you can trust. There are several ways to approach publishing as a museum, and you'll have to decide which path is best for you. Once you've set your mind that you'd like to create a publication and you've selected an excellent book printer, your next phase of planning will need to turn to who will design the print project. Here to shed some light on that topic is my esteemed colleague, longtime SEMC member, and book designer of some of the finest museum titles across the South. I give you Creative Director of Goosepen Press, Nathan Molman.
Thank you, Brandy. And you can hear me? Okay, I'm green now. Yes, thank you so much. And I have used Friesens for many years, and they've always done an excellent job. And I'm glad Brandy's there. She could be out selling big buildings and making a lot more money. So I'm glad she's in the book world. Again, I'm Nathan, and I have run Goosepen Studio and Press, I think, for 18, almost 19 years now. I'm a former museum person, a historical association where I was lured there with the promise of editing books, which I did, and designed one, which I don't show anyone anymore. And then I went out on my own 5 years later. And Goosepen is what the publishing world would call a book packager, meaning we can produce a book from start to finish. Mainly, museums come to me for design and print management, but sometimes they need other services as well. So, since I do care about museums, due diligence makes me want to say that I assume when someone comes to me that a museum is considered the two other options out there, and that's academic presses may be interested in your book, and you may also want the services of a co-publisher. And in a nutshell, the pros and cons are tripartite. So it's the level of involvement you want in your book, the amount of money one of these groups is going to ask you to contribute, often called a subvention. And then the third part is the profit. How much profit will your museum get by partnering up with either an academic press or a co-publisher? So you've got to run the numbers and ask the questions. So let's assume you've done that and you decided you want someone like me to help you. Just yesterday, I had a curator 2 days ago email me with an outline of the book that they want for next year. And so I immediately wrote back, I have a list of questions I always ask folks. Do you need editing? And editing involves, it could be big picture, it could be rounding up authorial contributions. Usually it's small picture because curators know how to write well, and they might need a copy editor for grammar, punctuation, and alignment with Chicago Manual of Style. So usually that's all that they need. This curator yesterday, they don't need that. That's fine. So the next question is, we've already talked about when they need the book, right? Do you have your illustrations prepared? And that's always a really big, important question because sometimes it takes time to make the reproductions. And my little cheat sheet for you, I'm not posting my slides because I'll inevitably hit the wrong button, but I have all these notes for you. It's a short primer of what I go through each time when a book comes my way. So the next question is illustrations. And my tips for you today are about this regard the photographer. You might have someone on your board or a staff member. This has happened to me before, who has a big, beautiful camera and they can make the photographs. And it has turned out that the color management was all wrong, for instance. That's what usually happens. Or when I pull it up on my nice big screen, it's gently out of focus. So things to look for when you have a photographer who wants to help you out. Or are they going to show up at your museum with color cards? These are essential. They have to go in the frame. It gives your someone like me at the end who's maybe retouching the photographs and outputting them for print a fighting chance to make the proper corrections. So they need to show up with this. Hopefully they'll show up with a gray card that they'll capture, because this sets the color temperature of the camera, and color temperature is about the warmth or the coolness of the light, and this puts it hopefully at daylight, which is what you need. If they show up with their big Nikon and they have a zoom lens on there, be fretful, because that introduces all kinds of distortions. You want a fixed lens. The zoom is in your feet. And hopefully they'll be shooting a raw file, which is a digital negative, and then they'll want to know, hopefully, how you want that file output from the digital negative. And you want a TIFF file. A TIFF file captures more information than a JPEG. And the color space, here again, this is color management stuff again, but the color space that the TIFF needs to be output in is Adobe RGB 1998. And the reason this is because it provides the smoothest transition from RGB to CMYK, which is what your book will be printed in. And you need that transition because various printers use various papers, and the North Americans use different color profiles than the Europeans, etc. So in the end, I convert the file to the printer profile. Okay, moving on. So we're going to get your illustrations taken care of. They're all set. Do you also need image rights management? So if you're an art museum, you might need that, and you got to be careful not to infringe on copyrights and upset people and get sued. So that's all in my slide for you. The key here is to start doing that early. Do you need an index? And if you need an index, how complex do you need it? You can create indexes a variety of ways. They can be simple. They can be complicated with cross references. Think about what you need there. Okay. So I've got that covered with you. I sort of now know what you need in that aspect, and you're just wanting your book. But I want to make sure the funds are there, right? So what I do is, off the start, I'm going to help you determine potential page count, because that really determines the cost of the book. So yesterday, with this curator who approached me, I created a dummy layout based on her potential word counts so that I could deduce a somewhat accurate page count in order to send to Brandy or another printer, right? So that she can return a quote to me. And the curator and I talk about trim size. With this book, it's going to be dual. It's going to be Spanish and English. So I had to plan on that as well, running Spanish text with the English text to determine a page count. And so we talk about trim size, we talk about page count, we talk about quantity. Some, you gotta, and always in a printing quote, I'll request, let me check my time, of a number of quantities, because you'll see price breaks for each. Don't get book fever and buy 2,000 and have 1,000 sitting in your museum basement 10 years from now. Be careful, and we'll run the numbers. So I get you a printing quote. I send you a letter of services with a proposal from me, and it turns out you have the money. Wonderful. We're gonna make a book. And when I find that out, we'll have will probably already have established a printing schedule, a tentative production schedule, which will refine with greater accuracy. Rules of thumb: you need to give yourself 3 months for design and 3 months for printing and that includes before you need the books delivered. Okay, that's a safe margin. Usually, realistically, it all gets done in less time, but why stress out? Do it earlier. Okay. And I do have a little note here at the bottom of this sheet. Is book time like normal time? No, book time can creep along for many months and then accelerate rapidly. So there's Einsteinian physics there, trust me. Okay. So we're all set. We have our manuscript, we have our illustrations, they've all been sent to me, and let's talk about the design. So we've already chatted about the trim size and the binding style. Very quickly, here's a book Brandy did for me. It's paperback, poetry book, soft cover with flaps. Oftentimes the museum will say, can you just give me a soft cover book, even though they're going to print the interior color? The thing is that it's the text block that costs the most. Maybe probably go ahead and put a case on it, right? Cheapest way to make a case: printed laminated case. The dust jacket essentially is glued to the boards in the place of cloth. Quarter binding or 3-piece case Brandy did for me years ago. Cloth here. This is very traditional. Printed wrap here. And then also the traditional, Brandy did this one for me years ago. This insouciant tennis player on here. Still a hit. So dust jacket with cloth. So we have to decide all that stuff early on. And then what I do, I always send, sometimes the curator knows what images he or she wants on the cover, right? And so I'll send, no matter what, I send a number of covers. And also at the same time, most likely like a first chapter and all the front matter too, to make sure the curator is happy with the design. I see some familiar names here, and one of them is Sarah Cartwright at the Ringling Museum of Art. So for instance, with the book I did for Sarah last year, she staged these contemporary sculptures by Shanique Smith in the Ringling Renaissance galleries. And I started out thinking, well, okay, maybe we need a classic book face. And she's like, well, no, Nathan, let's do something that is a little more contemporary without using a strict like sans serif. So the key here is that a display font is a tone, and you have to get the tone right. And with Sarah, we looked at literally hundreds of fonts until we finally narrowed one down. So there's a lot of work that goes into it before you see the cover, which you hopefully think is the way it was going to be destined. Let me see here. Okay, when I receive my complete layout from my designer, should he welcome me to make further adjustments since this is my book and I know the material better than he does? Yes, you should. It's fine. Some designers are going to send you a contract and say, oh, you get this many changes and that sort of thing. And that's understandable. Nobody wants to be abused, but you should be able to move things around. And Sarah and I did. We worked on the computer together, we repositioned almost every spread. Let me see, I have 2 more minutes. And do we talk about proofs? So proofs are important. And what I like to do, if the museum or the curator or collector doesn't have a Jiffy printer locally where they can pull a laser proof at 100%, it's got to be printed at 100%. Things look different on paper than they do on the screen, and we're talking about a book, so you need to look at paper. It doesn't not necessarily have to be color accurate. So we need to do a laser proof, so I'll get that made and ship it to somebody if they need it. The printer, like Brandy, for instance, she'll send you color, what I can't remember exactly, but color contract Epson prints, and also a plotter, which is the complete book for you to make corrections to. The next step for color accuracy, if you don't want to spend the money to send somebody on a press check, which is ideal. But the next step before that is to get a wet proof, which is a CMYK print of images from your book on the exact paper that you're using for your book. So if that looks good, you'll be in good shape. 57 seconds left. So I think I'll stop there, and hopefully someone will have a question for me and get me back on track if I got off. Thank you. Hillary, I'm sorry. I should give you a good
That's
segue.
okay.
Okay. I haven't planned this, but I've known Hillary for eons because she was my client years ago. And she does everything we just talked about except for hiring the designer. She doesn't do the design. So that's how I came into it. In recent years, they've hired their own designer. So she's a crack shot editor and just a general museum publications guru. And I'm glad to know her. Thank you, Hillary.
That was very sweet, Nathan. Hi, y'all. This is always a little bit weird to do when I can't see your faces, but I am gonna share my screen, hopefully. All right, there we go. That's my big question to start out with. Is any of this true? Of course, a printer, I love Brandy, is going to tell you that you should do more printing. And the designer is going to say that you should make more books too, right? But I'm here to say sometimes that really is true. As the parent of a Gen Z child, I actually see younger generations being really excited about physical media, which seems counterintuitive, but it's true. If you have ever owned a digital book or an album or a movie, you know that that doesn't really mean that you have it in your hands. Sometimes it can be taken back, Amazon, even if you think you have paid for something and you own it. And as much as we think the sharing economy is like so exciting to have access to all this stuff, lately it seems like it's contracting rather than expanding. So the frustration of print materials is that things are set in stone once they're printed, but that is also their advantage, that you have them physically forever. Um, Print materials can be profitable for museums, but profit is not usually the reason that any of us do things in this industry. What they really are, more than that, is a chance to fulfill our educational mission. They let us share images and stories with our audiences and sometimes with new ones. All that said, not every project needs a print piece, let alone a book. Um, Before you decide to do a printing project, and I am going to talk specifically about books just because they're the biggest undertaking, you need to have answers to all these questions. Like sit down and make sure that you know what the answers are. So first off, does this project have an audience? And if it doesn't, maybe you shouldn't do it. Sometimes that audience might be one very important person. I would be lying if I said I'd never made a book for one person. It has happened numerous times. And I'm sure that we're all familiar with that kind of situation. Other times you might have a national audience for a story. I always think about the Columbus Museum's Alma Thomas show and book as a particularly great example. Question number two, how are you going to pay for this? It is awesome if you earn money at the end of the process, but printers generally do not work on consignment. So you're going to need to pay for some things up front, and you need a way to do that. Brandy or other printing sales reps can work up a printing quote for you based on a similar book so that you have some idea of how much that part is going to cost. Also, if you don't have someone on staff to corral, write, edit text, track down and clear image rights, take photographs, and design the thing, you will have to pay for all of those things. I think it's worth paying to make a good product. There are firms like Goosepen or Marquand that can help you find those resources. There's also a museum publications listserv, and I will put the link to that in the chat in a minute. That's a really great resource for this. If you're like, what's out there? I need somebody who can do indexing of this particular kind of project. Does anybody know anybody? It's just a great way to talk to your peers and get some really good advice. Who's going to make this book? You could work with a university press for the making and the selling part of it, but that will definitely decrease your potential profits. Amazon Advantage is one place to sell if you're serving as your own distributor. That's rare. The Georgia Museum of Art does that because we're weird and we've been doing it that way forever. It works out for us. I don't love dealing with Amazon's system on the back end of it, and I do not like giving Jeff Bezos money, but it is really helpful for getting your books out there on a very low budget. Essentially, Amazon Advantage is a program where they will send you an email every so often. We get one about once a week, and they say, please send these books to this warehouse. They don't pay you until they sell them. They don't pay you the full list price. They pay you less than the wholesale price in lots of cases, but it is where people go to buy a lot of books. So it is the best way to get your stuff out there if you're trying to sell it. You can take pre-orders if you have an audience and you're just trying to sell your book yourself. You can make a form and send it out to all of your museum members, your audiences. We have had great success with that on a couple of projects. It may sound silly to think about where you're going to put these books, but it is a really important question. Books are heavy and they take up physical space. Make sure that your shelving is up to the task. We have had shelving collapse. It's been a long time. We have very sturdy shelving now, but just make sure that you know what you're getting into and that you have a place to put these things. I believe that Friesens can provide that for a cost, and there are other places that can do it too if you don't have a warehouse or a storage room to put these boxes of books. You are still into this. You're not dissuaded. You're like, I'm going to make my book. I have answers to all those questions. Good for you. Here are a few more tips and tricks if you haven't done this before. ISBNs help make sure that your book is listed among other booksellers and people who distribute to libraries. You can buy them from Bowker's Books and Prints in packs of 1, 10, or 100. I would not start with 100, but 1 is sometimes too small. You get a much better deal in volume. So my advice is to buy 10 if you think you might do this again in the future and it's not just a one-time thing. As far as how to handle your wholesale sales, generally we price our wholesale price is about 50% of the list price of the book. When we used to print larger quantities, we would pretty much set that wholesale price at the per copy cost for the book, just figuring it out. So that's adding up your printing cost, your author fees, your designer costs, etc., and then dividing the total number of books, that cost by the total number of books, so that you know exactly how much each copy is costing you. But sometimes it depends on storage space. Again, the more books you print at one time, the lower the per copy cost will be. But as Nathan said, you don't want to get stuck with 1,000 books that you can't sell, and you may not have a place to put them. Fake deadlines are your friend. So that's also what Nathan was talking about. Making a schedule is really important, and maybe don't let everybody else involved with the project know what the real schedule is. You can do a book start to finish in as little as 4 months. I have done it. It's very stressful. I would not advise it. Build in a lot of padding because things will go wrong. If they don't, you will have your books earlier than you thought. What a wonderful surprise that would be. Authors will miss their deadlines. Other tasks will get in the way. Just make sure that you're accounting for all of that. Tracking down those images and making sure that they are the right resolution for print will take some time, and so does clearing copyright. I know Nathan does have some slides about that. Some artists are more important to clear copyright on than others. Living artists and artists who died more recently are going to be more difficult. Artists who died 75 years ago, you are mostly in the clear. There's some fuzziness around this, and it depends when they published their works and if they were under copyright to begin with. Artists' Rights Society is the main big company that helps you clear rights. They have a huge list of all the artists they represent on their website. It's the best place to start out looking for that. Um, there's also the watch list, which I can never remember what it stands for, but it's run by the University of Texas. And they have some of these smaller representatives on there. Like there's this artist and they're represented by a certain gallery. Mostly, I would just say do your due diligence. I do think it's extremely unlikely that you're going to get sued for something like this, especially because we're mostly in the business of fair use. We're providing something that's educational. We're not out to make a big profit. We're transforming it in a way. The College Art Association has a great guide to fair use for museums, which is really worth tracking down on their website. I'll try to find the link for that too and send it. It just might put your mind at ease a little bit more. Um, keep a spreadsheet of all of your images with their file names and their copyright status just to keep yourself organized. Um, design takes time, takes more time if you have a really good design. I disappeared for a minute there. Okay. Let's go back to that screen share. Okay. Um, printing alone will take a minimum of 5 weeks door to door if you're doing proper offset work. Speaking of that, you can print with Blurb or a service like that, especially if you just need a couple of books. Maybe you have one of those one-person books that you're making. But if you want to sell these things rather than give them away and you want a high quality product, offset printing will give you the best look every time. That's not only true of images, it's true of text. The text will look sharper on the page if you're printing it via offset. And the per copy cost is significantly lower for offset printing than it is for doing a 1 copy or a 10 copy run through Blurb. You can print with a local if you want to be able to do color proofing and you want to have the easiest possible delivery. And they might cut you a deal, but it's probably going to be more expensive just because of economies of scale. It also might not even be faster just because smaller printers usually have to send out their binding jobs. They don't have that in-house. That slows things down. So it depends on your schedule. I have found that Canada is usually less expensive significantly than printing in the US. Belgium and Italy are roughly equivalent to Canada in cost, but shipping takes longer because it's on a boat, it's not on a truck. Or if you can get it sent on an airplane, but it's going to be a lot more expensive that way. China and South Korea are even less expensive, but there are tariffs. Who knows? There could be tariffs on any country in the future. We don't know what world we're living in right now. That's just another thing to think about. We used to print a lot in China and Korea, and then we would airship a certain number of copies to make an exhibition opening deadline. But port instability, government instability, just generally trying to calm things down, kind of put a damper on that. Whatever you're thinking about doing for printing, I would advise bidding out to a number of different printers. You're going to get the best price that way. If you're a state or federal institution, you're probably already required to do that, but it's good practice to get into regardless, unless you are in a Brewster's Millions situation where you are trying to spend as much money as fast as possible. You may be so lucky. We are generally not. If you want to sell other places than through Amazon, because you feel like it's destroying locally owned stores, you want to boycott it, go for it. That's great. Bookshop.com will let you list books for sale too. You might be able to work out a consignment agreement with a local bookstore. You may be able to sell books in your own shop, at tabling events, on your website, etc. It does take some hustle to do that. Or you can sign an agreement with the university press, and they will take about half of your wholesale price, which, if you remember, is about half of the retail price. If you sign an agreement with someone like Scala or Rizzoli, you get their fancy name on the spine. Might be worth doing, but they will take even more of your wholesale price generally. What do you get for that money? You get some stuff. You get more marketing, although you are competing with the rest of their titles. If they are distributing 50 books a quarter, you're one of those, and you might not be the most high profile one. They're going to try to concentrate on the things that make them more money because they are businesses. They will sometimes represent you at trade shows, and they will list your book on Amazon and take half or more of what you would have gotten paid otherwise. So it just kind of depends on what your capacity is. Um, Design costs can be as much or more than printing costs as you're budgeting, depending on the book, but a well-designed book is much more likely to get noticed and to sell. A good designer will also be able to reduce your printing costs by setting up files properly to begin with, to where the printer doesn't have to say, go back and redo all this stuff. We're going to charge you more for it. By potentially creating things like one color sections for your book. Instead of printing the whole thing in 4 colors, they're going to understand how to set stuff up in signatures to save money, and to know like what sizes are the most common sizes to print at. So that you don't have a weird sized book that you have to use then a whole different size of paper, and it's going to cost you more money as a result. And of course, like a good designer is going to make your book look better because they're going to have the right margins. They're going to have white space. When I look at books that somebody just designed themselves, a lot of times that is where you can see the difference, is that they just crammed it edge to edge and it doesn't look good. Even if you don't know why it doesn't look good, it doesn't look good to you. Um, when your book looks nice, you might win a design award through SEMC, through their publications competition, and that's going to raise the profile of your book, which leads to more sales. Making a book is fun. That's the last thing. I just gave y'all a bunch of like scared straight talk, but making a book is really rewarding and I love doing it. I still get excited every time I open up a box that's come in and I get to see the books for the first time. Hearing from people who use and value these books brings it home regularly. I often refer to myself as being in the book discarding instead of the book acquiring phase of my life, and that's true. But art books are something special. They're not the same as reading something on your Kindle or looking at it on the website. And books are great. That's why we're all here. So that's me wrapping up. And I guess we can open it for questions now.
Yeah, please do ask your questions. We're here to help you all. If you want to add them to the chat, you're more than welcome to do that. Or you can turn on your mic, ask the question live. So our panelists are here to help you with those publishing questions. Let us know. Let's see. Oh, that's Hillary sharing what is this you're sharing, Hillary?
This is the National Museum Publishing Seminar, which is a conference that happens every other year. It's run by the University of Chicago. That is where the Museum Publishing listserv lives. It's on that website somewhere, so you can sign up for it.
Yeah, be sure to do that. Okay. Any questions? Don't
I
hold
have a
out.
question. I have a question for Brandy, in regards to the tariffs and shipping and that sort of thing. We worked on a book earlier this year, and I'm wondering where things stand now. I mean, I know it's kind of up in the air, like we never know when something's going to happen, but if you could speak to that, Brandy, please.
Yeah, no problem. So that was something that we were definitely scared about. We're a Canadian company. We set 7 miles from North Dakota. We've been on high alert, and that information changed a myriad of times. What was actually happening over several months. But there are tariffs in place on many countries. However, all tariffs were implemented under the 1971 IEPPA standards, which to laymen's like us means the Freedom of Information Act. So it means at current and present time, any kind of publication, whether it be book, periodical, what have you, is passing free of the tariff, because it's considered educational and informational. And if they stop the flow of information, then, we're doing something even bigger than, just collecting tax revenue, right? Can that change at any time? Absolutely. Where we do see it affecting us, and probably a great deal of printing companies, is that these supplies come from a myriad of places. We, as a Canadian printer, buy a great deal of paper from the United States. So we had to start working early to stock our warehouses up while we were in, down times where no tariffs were implemented. We deal a lot with Garda. That's an Italian paper. So, obviously on our raw materials. So in that way, it may be slightly affecting cost. We're trying to keep that at bay as much as we can. But on your actual physical projects, when they're leaving the plant, to my knowledge, nowhere are you getting a tariff on printed materials.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? We do have two questions in the chat. John Reed is asking, what is the best approach to restarting a publications initiative?
That's a good question. We're a little bit in that right now. The Georgia Museum of Art used to publish probably 2 to 5 books a year, and we've been in a little bit of a dry spell there. Just because we got a new director and we had some new things we needed to do. We went through a whole rebranding process. I think maybe just sitting down and thinking through those questions that I mentioned, and then having a really good conversation with your director or your board or whoever is kind of in charge of making those decisions. I wouldn't just jump into it. I would really think through, like, I mean, I say this all the time in my communications role, is like, what's the audience? Who's it for? Why do you want to do it? Make sure that you get that straight before you do anything else.
Anybody else want to add to that? Okay.
I have a question about working with a university publisher. You went over some of the things, and Mr. Molman did as well in regards to, the design of the publication, doing things for art, how the book is going to look when it's all finished. When working with a university publisher, does it kind of vary from school to school, or do the schools generally take care of that process for you, work with you in conjunction, or are you expected to sort of handle that yourself on the side?
Hillary, do you want to answer this? You want me to take a stab?
I can start with it, and you can fill in. I think it depends a lot on the university publisher, on the specific press. It's going to depend on what their emphasis is. I feel like different ones have different sort of, it's like their beat as a journalist, like their thing that they really specialize in. And how much of a profit they're expected to make. Like, are they supposed to be completely self-supporting? Do they have a big endowment? Sometimes they will, a lot of times they would do the design for you and the marketing and handle the print production and so on. But I think contracts are always a negotiation in that regard. So it just kind of depends on what you're bringing to the table. And anything that saves them costs, they're probably going to be in favor of.
Yeah, I can speak to this a little bit as well. I work with a lot of university presses throughout the Southeast, and I'm primarily the person doing their color printing and not their, black and white kind of soft cover books. So I end up with a lot of these projects, whether they come from the university or they come from directly from the museum. And typically, I see that there may be a different level of involvement in that design process between the museum and the university press. But I would say that by and large, they take the helm of design, distribution, marketing, and then contracting the project directly through the book printer that they choose. I think that most of the time I'm just seeing a high level of collaboration in those initial contracts or in the actual design of the project.
Thank you.
Perfect. Okay, there is another question in the chat. Martina is asking, is it worth sharing about Library of Congress CIP data?
Yes. CIP stands for cataloging and publication, in case folks don't know. You have to have published a certain number of books before the Library of Congress will even consider doing cataloging and publication for you. That's kind of if you look at the colophon of a book and it's got all this like subcategories that it falls into, it has like the birth and death dates of the authors. A lot of times that's what the CIP program does. It's not fast. And I feel like it has gotten, they basically want you to upload your entire designed book these days to be able to even get that information, and then it will take months after that. Um, we have decided to just move to just getting the Library of Congress control number and printing that in there. And then, like, they can do the CIP later. It's not printed in the book, but it is still available through the Library of Congress as long as you send them a copy of your book after the fact. I love it and I wish we could do it all the time, but it just became when you have a book that's focused on an exhibition and there's like a very, very clear deadline, that's a different situation. And we were just coming down to the wire too frequently. And I didn't want to harass them more than I needed to be like, I need this. We have to go to print.
Yeah, and I left a link in the chat that's just some self-publishing information. That'll give you information about just the TOC from Library of Congress, not the more in-depth CIP. But what I do see a lot of people, because you need to have that book done, and very often that book's not done until we're ready to go to press, is going in with your initial printing with that TOC. And then once you've received that, you can always include it, update the copyright page for a reprint or later on.
And Brandy and Hillary, can you hear me?
Yeah.
May I add one more thing about the marketing? And we discussed distribution in the context of what the co-publishers and academic presses can do. But if you were to come to a packager, like me, and you think you want distribution, that it can be arranged. We have to do it well in advance in order to make a distributor's catalog. So like a year in advance is good. So they can approve of the project and decide that they're going to run with it. So keep that in mind. And what happens with these agreements usually is that the distributor lets the museum sell their own copies and make all the profit off of it. It's the copies that the distributor sells where they take a very sizable chunk, but in exchange, you get your book out into the world, and that's often the most important thing for a museum. They're not going to profit on it necessarily financially. The profit is in other areas. So keep the distribution in mind, especially where the schedule is concerned.
Fantastic. Any other last minute questions? We're getting down to the hour. We're quickly approaching. So we're happy to take one more question or two. However, don't y'all speak up. Like, don't let this opportunity go by. Please speak up. But I will say, though, I will be emailing everyone a recording of this video, and also we'll share Hillary, Brandy, and Nathan's information. So if perhaps you think of a question later on, you will have the chance to contact them privately if you would like. So if there are no other questions, I really appreciate you all being here today. Thank you to Hillary, Brandy, and Nathan for speaking with us today and telling us all about publishing. I hope you all are encouraged to, embark on your own publishing journey. And everyone here is here to help you. And again, we thank you all. If there's no other questions, we're happy to take one more. But otherwise, we understand if you need to move on to your day. So thank you all. We appreciate you for joining us today, and we hope you have a great day.